Princess Kalara stood alone on her balcony and watched another ship leave the palace. That made 7 suitors in 3 months. 7 alien nobles who came to meet her and then left as quickly as they could. She pressed her hands against the cold stone railing and tried not to feel the weight of failure pressing down on her shoulders. The 3 moons of her homeworld cast silver light across the palace gardens below. Kalara had lived in this palace her entire life. 23 years of being told how to sit, how to speak, how to smile. 23 years of pretending to be interested in flower arrangements and ceremonial dances when all she wanted to do was study star charts and practice combat techniques. Her attendant Mirala appeared in the doorway behind her. The older woman's face showed the same sad expression Kalara had seen too many times lately. "Your Highness, the Emperor requests your presence in the throne room." Kalara took a deep breath and followed Mirala through the crystal corridors of the palace. She knew what this meeting would be about. The same thing every meeting was about these days. Her future, her failure to secure a political marriage, her inability to be the perfect princess everyone needed her to be. The throne room doors opened and Kalara walked inside with her head held high. Her father, Emperor Valthion, sat on the jade throne looking tired. The Imperial Council members stood on either side of him. 12 pairs of eyes turned to look at her, and Kalara saw pity in most of them. She hated pity more than anything. "Kalara, my daughter," her father began. His voice sounded heavy and worn. "We must discuss what happened today with the Thalorian ambassador." Kalara remembered the Thalorian noble who had arrived that morning. He had pale blue skin and 4 arms, and he had spent the entire lunch talking about his collection of ancient musical instruments. When Kalara mentioned her interest in military strategy, he had looked at her like she had spoken in an alien language. By dinner time, he was making excuses to leave. "He found me unsuitable," Kalara said simply. Like all the others, Counselor Draven leaned forward. He was an old Savanthian with silver markings on his violet skin. "Perhaps, Your Highness, if you would focus more on traditional pursuits. Your interest in combat training and engineering is most unusual for a princess. Suitors find it off-putting." Kalara felt anger rise in her chest. "So I should pretend to be someone else? I should lie about what interests me? That seems like a poor foundation for a marriage." "It is the foundation for a political alliance," Draven replied, "which is what we need. The trade treaties with the Corvian system depend on a royal marriage. The defense pact with the Zephyrite worlds requires a union between noble families. Your refusal to conform puts the entire empire at risk." "I am not refusing to conform," Kalara said, her voice sharp. "I am simply being myself. If that is not enough, then perhaps these alliances are not worth having." The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. One did not speak so boldly in front of the Imperial Council. But Kalara was tired of pretending, tired of bowing her head and apologizing for who she was. Emperor Valthion raised his hand and the room fell silent. He looked at his daughter with sad eyes. "Kalara, I understand your frustration, but you must understand our position. Without these alliances, our empire becomes vulnerable. We need strong partnerships with other worlds." "Then find someone else to marry off," Kalara said. "My sister Miala is perfectly conventional. She would make an excellent political bride." "Miala is only 16, her father replied, "and the treaties specifically name you as the bride. You are the crown princess. The responsibility falls to you." Kalara wanted to scream. She wanted to run from the throne room and never come back. But she was a princess, so she stood still and kept her face calm. "What would you have me do, father? I have met with 7 suitors. Each one has left. I cannot change who I am." "Perhaps you do not need to change," her father said slowly. He looked at Counselor Draven and then back at Kalara. "There is one more option we have not yet explored." "What option?" Kalara asked. "The humans have requested an audience," Valthion said. "Their diplomatic ship arrives tomorrow. They wish to discuss potential alliances with our empire." Kalara had heard of humans. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of them by now. They were the newcomers, barely 200 years into space travel. Most of the older civilizations considered them primitive and rough. The humans had a reputation for solving problems with violence first and diplomacy second. They had won several battles against the Krill Raiders through tactics that other species considered insane. "You want me to meet with a human?" Kalara asked. The Thalorians would barely speak to them at the last Galactic Assembly. The Corvians call them barbarians. The Corvians also lost 3 battles to human forces, her father pointed out. And the Thalorians have never won a military conflict in their entire history. Perhaps the opinions of traditional powers are not the only ones that matter. Counselor Draven looked horrified. Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious. Humans are barely civilized. They have no understanding of proper diplomatic protocol. Their culture is chaotic and violent. To even suggest a union between the crown princess and a human is what? Valthion interrupted, his voice suddenly hard. Is it worse than watching my daughter be rejected by every suitable noble in the galaxy? Is it worse than seeing her forced to pretend to be someone she is not? Is it worse than breaking crucial alliances because we cannot find a match? The throne room fell silent. Kalara stared at her father in surprise. She had never heard him speak so forcefully to the council. Valthion turned to Kalara. I am not commanding you, my daughter. I am asking you. Will you meet with the human representative? If you find no common ground, we will seek another path. But I have studied their species. They value different qualities than most of the galaxy. They respect strength and independence. They admire warriors and engineers. Perhaps they will see in you what others have been too blind to recognize. Kalara thought about this. She had nothing to lose. 7 suitors had already rejected her. What was one more? And if the humans truly valued the things she was good at, perhaps the meeting would at least be interesting. I will meet with them, Kalara said finally. But father, I will not pretend. I will not hide who I am or what I care about. If they reject me for being myself, so be it. I would not ask you to be anyone but yourself, Valthion said gently. That is the point. That night, Kalara lay awake in her chambers and thought about the meeting to come. She wondered what the human would be like. Would he be crude and violent like the rumors suggested? Would he look at her with the same disappointment she had seen in 7 other pairs of eyes? Or would he be different? Kalara turned over and looked out her window at the 3 moons. Somewhere in the darkness of space, a human ship was traveling toward her world. Inside that ship was someone who might be her last chance at securing the alliances her people needed. Her last chance at proving she could fulfill her duty as crown princess. But more than that, it was her last chance to find someone who might accept her as she truly was. Kalara closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and with it the human who would either save her future or seal her fate as the princess nobody wanted. Captain Jake Murphy stood at the viewing port of the Frontier Dawn and watched the Savanthian homeworld grow larger as their ship approached. The planet was beautiful, covered in purple oceans and green continents with 3 moons hanging in orbit around it. He had been in space for 8 years now, visiting dozens of alien worlds, but the sight of a new planet still made his heart beat faster. Captain, we'll be landing in 30 minutes, Lieutenant Sophie Grant said from behind him. She was checking her data pad for the 100th time that morning. I've loaded all the information about Savanthian customs into your comm device. Remember, direct eye contact is considered respectful. Keep your hands visible during conversations. And whatever you do, don't touch anyone without permission. Jake smiled. Sophie had been his diplomatic advisor for 3 years, and she always got nervous before first contact meetings. I've got it, Sophie. This isn't my first alien planet. No, but it's your first meeting with an imperial family, Sophie replied. The message from Emperor Valthion was very formal. Whatever this meeting is about, it's important. Jake had been wondering about that. The invitation had come through official channels, requesting a meeting with the Emperor himself. That was unusual. Normally, first contact with a new species involved lower-level diplomats and lots of trade discussions. Going straight to the Emperor suggested something bigger was happening. The shuttle landed on a crystalline platform outside the palace. Jake stepped out and immediately felt the weight of dozens of stares. Savanthian guards and palace workers watched him with curious eyes. He knew what they were thinking. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy as rough, uncivilized fighters. Most older species looked down on them. Jake didn't let it bother him. Humans had earned their place in the galaxy through hard work and determination. They might not have the fancy technology or ancient traditions of species like the Savanthians, but they had something just as valuable. They had heart. The throne room was impressive. Walls of crystal rose high above them, and the floor was made of polished stone that reflected light like water. Emperor Valthion sat on a throne made of green jade, wearing robes that shimmered with threads of silver and gold. He looked regal and powerful, but Jake noticed the tension around his eyes. This was a man under stress. Jake performed the bow that Sophie had taught him during their 3-week journey. Your Imperial Majesty, I am Captain Jake Murphy of the Earth Alliance. We are honored by your invitation. Captain Murphy, Valthion said, studying him carefully. Your reputation precedes you. The defeat of the Krill war fleet at the Deneb crossing was impressive for such a young species. Jake kept his expression neutral. The Battle of Deneb had been brutal. The Krill had attacked a human colony world, killing thousands of civilians. Jake had been part of the fleet that tracked them down and stopped them. We had motivation, Your Majesty. They attacked innocents. We couldn't let that stand. Something changed in the Emperor's eyes. Approval, maybe. Indeed, Captain, I will be direct with you. My daughter, Princess Kalara, requires a political union to secure certain alliance treaties. However, she has proven incompatible with suitors from our traditional allied species. Jake felt Sophie tense beside him. This was definitely not what they had expected. A marriage proposal? That went way beyond standard diplomatic relations. I understand this is unusual, Valthion continued, but I have studied your species, Captain. You value different qualities than most of the galaxy. You respect warriors and engineers. You admire strength and independence. I believe you may find common ground with my daughter where others have failed. Will you meet with her? Jake's mind was racing, but he kept his voice calm. Of course, Your Majesty. I would be honored to meet Princess Kalara. 1 hour later, Jake found himself in the palace training arena, and he understood immediately why the other suitors had left. Princess Kalara wasn't in a fancy dress or sitting in a formal reception room. She was wearing combat gear and sparring with an instructor who was twice her size. Jake watched as she moved across the practice mat with incredible speed and precision. She used her opponent's weight against him, swept his legs out from under him, and had a training blade at his throat in less than 5 seconds. Again, she commanded, helping the instructor to his feet. Perhaps after you meet your guest. Your Highness, the instructor suggested. Nodding toward Jake, Kalara turned around and Jake got his first clear look at her. She had violet skin and sharp, intelligent eyes that studied him the same way he studied enemy battle formations. She was beautiful, but more than that, she looked dangerous. She looked like someone who could take care of herself. Captain Murphy, Kalara said. Her voice was cool and skeptical. I assume my father told you about his desperate plan to marry me off to anyone who will have me. Jake couldn't help but smile. He appreciated honesty. He mentioned something about political unions and alliance treaties. He left out the part where you could probably kick my ass in a fight. Kalara blinked in surprise. Then to Jake's relief, she laughed. It was a genuine laugh, not the fake, polite sound he had heard from so many diplomats. You're honest, at least. Most suitors pretend not to notice my unfeminine pursuits until they've found an excuse to leave. Where I come from, knowing how to fight is considered pretty feminine, Jake replied. Half my best soldiers are women, including Lieutenant Grant here, who could probably take both of us. Sophie shot him a warning look. But Kalara's expression had changed from skeptical to interested. Tell me, Captain Murphy, why did Earth accept this invitation? Surely you knew you would be meeting with the princess that nobody wants. Jake met her eyes directly. Princess Kalara, may I be completely honest with you? Please. Until we walked into that throne room, we had no idea this was about a marriage proposal. We thought this was a standard diplomatic meeting. Jake paused. But having met you now, I think every suitor who walked away was an idiot. Your Highness, my people have a saying, we don't want someone who completes us. We want someone who can fight beside us. For the first time since the conversation began, Kalara smiled. It was a real smile that transformed her entire face. Perhaps this meeting won't be a complete waste of time after all, Captain. Would you care to spar? Jake had not expected that, but he wasn't about to back down. I'd be honored. The next hour was one of the most interesting of Jake's life. Kalara was fast and skilled, using techniques he had never seen before. But Jake had been trained in multiple combat styles and he adapted quickly. They circled each other on the practice mat, trading moves and counter-moves. Neither of them won, but that wasn't the point. The point was that they were evenly matched. When they finally stopped, both breathing hard, Kalara was grinning. You're better than I expected. You're better than anyone I've ever fought, Jake replied honestly. Where did you learn those moves? I've been training since I was 6, Kalara said. The council thinks it's inappropriate for a princess, but I don't care. Combat training keeps me focused. It helps me think clearly. Same here, Jake agreed. Some of my best strategic thinking happens while I'm sparring. They sat down on the edge of the practice mat, and Kalara handed him a water container. Tell me about the Battle of Deneb. I've read the official reports, but I want to hear it from someone who was there. Jake spent the next 30 minutes describing the battle. He explained how the Krill had ambushed the human colony, how the fleet had tracked them to the Deneb system, how Commander Lisa Hayes had deliberately vented atmosphere from half her ships to create a debris field that confused the enemy sensors. Kalara listened with intense focus, asking sharp questions about tactics and ship movements. She understood military strategy in a way that impressed Jake. This wasn't someone who had read a few books. This was someone who had studied warfare seriously. Your commander took a huge risk with that debris field maneuver, Kalara said. If the Krill had figured it out sooner, you would have lost half your fleet. True, Jake agreed. But Commander Hayes knew that conventional tactics wouldn't work. The Krill had superior numbers. We needed to do something unexpected, something they wouldn't anticipate. Unconventional thinking, Kalara said thoughtfully. That seems to be a human specialty. We're good at adapting, Jake said. Humans aren't the strongest or fastest or smartest species in the galaxy. But we're stubborn. We don't give up. And we're willing to try crazy things if that's what it takes to win. Kalara looked at him with those sharp, intelligent eyes. Captain Murphy, I have met 7 suitors in the past 3 months. 6 of them ran away as soon as they realized I wasn't a quiet, obedient princess. The 7th lasted through 1 dinner before making excuses to leave. You've been here for 2 hours and you haven't once suggested that I should be more feminine or traditional. Why is that? Jake considered his answer carefully. Princess Kalara, I grew up on Earth. Humanity almost destroyed itself multiple times through wars and conflicts. We survived because we learned to value people for what they could do, not what gender they were or what traditional roles they were supposed to fill. When I look at you, I don't see someone who's too strong or too independent. I see someone who would be an asset to any alliance. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake and Kalara spent almost every day together. They met early in the mornings for combat training, worked together in the afternoon reviewing military strategies and engineering projects, and talked late into the evenings about everything from politics to philosophy. With each passing day, Jake found himself more impressed by the woman he was getting to know. The training sessions were Jake's favorite part of each day. Kalara pushed him harder than any opponent he had ever faced. She was faster than him, but he had more endurance. She knew techniques he had never seen, but he could adapt and improvise. They traded victories and defeats, and neither of them minded losing because they were both learning. One morning, as they finished a particularly intense sparring match, Kalara sat down on the practice mat and looked at him thoughtfully. Jake, can I ask you something? Of course, Jake said, sitting down beside her. Why did you really agree to this? To meet me? To spend all this time with me? You could have made polite excuses and left, like all the others. Jake took a drink of water and considered his answer. Honestly? At first I was just curious. The Emperor made it sound like you were some kind of problem that needed solving. But when I met you, when I saw you fighting and heard you talk about military strategy, I realized you weren't a problem at all. You were just someone who didn't fit into the box everyone expected you to fit into. And that doesn't bother you? Kalara asked. Why would it bother me? Jake replied. Kalara, some of the best people I know don't fit into boxes. My first commanding officer was a woman named Lisa Hayes, who everyone said was too emotional to lead a fleet. She became one of the most successful commanders in Earth's military history. My best friend growing up was told he was too small to be a soldier. He ended up becoming a pilot and saved hundreds of lives during the Krill attacks. People who don't fit into boxes are usually the ones who change the world. Kalara smiled, but Jake saw something sad in her eyes. I wish my people saw it that way. The council looks at me and sees a disappointment. A princess who should be graceful and diplomatic, but instead wants to study engineering and practice combat techniques. Then the council is wrong, Jake said firmly, and eventually they'll realize it. They also spent hours in the palace archives, reviewing historical battles and discussing tactics. Kalara was fascinated by human military history. She wanted to know about every major conflict, every innovation in strategy and technology. Jake found himself learning just as much from her. Savanthian military doctrine was based on precision and coordination, while human tactics emphasized flexibility and improvisation. Together, they began to see how the two approaches could complement each other. One afternoon, Kalara took Jake to a restricted section of the palace that most visitors never saw. It was her private workshop, a large room filled with engineering equipment and half-finished projects. Holographic displays showed power flow diagrams and energy efficiency calculations. Tools and components covered every available surface. "I designed a new power distribution system for the palace," Kalara explained, pulling up schematics on a large display. "The old system wasted 30% of the energy generated. My design reduces that waste to less than 5%, but I had to build it in secret because the council said it was inappropriate work for a princess." Jake studied the schematics with growing amazement. The design was brilliant. Kalara had found ways to route power that shouldn't have been possible with Savanthian technology. "This is incredible work. You should be recognized for this, not hiding it." "Tell that to Counselor Draven," Kalara said bitterly. "He found out about my workshop last year and lectured me for 3 hours about proper princess behavior." "Counselor Draven is an idiot," Jake said bluntly. "This design could revolutionize energy distribution across your entire empire. You have a gift, Kalara, a real talent for engineering. Hiding it doesn't help anyone." Kalara looked at him with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. "You really mean that, don't you? You're not just saying it to be polite." "I never say things just to be polite," Jake replied. "Ask Sophie. She's always telling me I need to be more diplomatic." Kalara laughed, and the sad look in her eyes faded a little. They also talked about their different cultures. Jake learned about Savanthian history, about the empire that had lasted for thousands of years, built on traditions of honor and family loyalty. He learned about their complex social structure, where every person had a specific role to play. He learned about their art and music, which was beautiful but followed strict rules and patterns. Kalara learned about Earth's chaotic history. Jake told her about the hundreds of different cultures that existed on one planet, about wars and conflicts that had nearly destroyed humanity, about how they had finally learned to work together. He told her about Earth's messy, complicated approach to government and society, where rules were constantly being questioned and changed. "Your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times," Kalara said one evening as they stood on her balcony, watching the 3 moons rise. "Yet you survived. How?" "We learned," Jake said simply. "Usually the hard way. Humans are stubborn. We fail, we get back up, we try something different. We make mistakes, but we don't let those mistakes define us forever. We adapt. I wish my people could adapt like that," Kalara said quietly. "We're so focused on maintaining tradition that we've forgotten how to change, how to grow." Jake wanted to say something comforting, but before he could, Sophie appeared in the doorway. "Captain, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The Thalorian ambassador is here for the state dinner tonight, and he's requesting to speak with you." Jake sighed. He had forgotten about the state dinner. Every week, the palace hosted a formal meal with various diplomatic representatives. Tonight's dinner included the Thalorian ambassador, and Jake had a feeling it wasn't going to be pleasant. The dinner was held in a grand hall with crystal chandeliers and tables made of polished stone. Dozens of aliens from different species sat at the long tables, all wearing formal diplomatic attire. Jake wore his Earth Alliance dress uniform, and Kalara sat beside him in traditional Savanthian ceremonial robes. The Thalorian ambassador was seated across from them. He was a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and 4 arms. He had been one of Kalara's rejected suitors, and he clearly wasn't happy to see Jake sitting in his place. The meal started well enough with polite conversation about trade routes and cultural exchanges. But as the evening went on, the Thalorian ambassador became more pointed in his comments. "Tell me, Captain Murphy," the ambassador said during the main course, "what does Earth hope to gain from this alliance with the Savanthian Empire? Surely you realize that your species is quite inexperienced in galactic politics." Jake kept his voice pleasant. "We're always interested in learning from more established civilizations, Ambassador. but we also believe we have something to offer. Fresh perspectives, perhaps. Fresh perspectives, the ambassador repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of that. Is that what you call military aggression? Your species has been involved in more armed conflicts in the past 50 years than most civilizations experience in centuries. We've defended ourselves and our allies, Jake replied, his voice still calm but with an edge now. We don't start fights, Ambassador, but we finish them. The Thalorian turned to Kalara. Your Highness, surely you must see the wisdom in choosing a partner from a more civilized species. The Thalorian people have a rich history of art and culture. We value peace and diplomacy over violence. You value peace because you have powerful allies to fight your battles for you, Kalara said coolly. The Thalorian military hasn't won a significant engagement in 300 years. Perhaps if you spent less time critiquing other species and more time learning from them, that would change. The table went silent. Everyone stared at Kalara in shock. Princesses weren't supposed to speak so bluntly to ambassadors. The Thalorian ambassador's face darkened. Your Highness, I came to this dinner to offer you wise counsel. You are making a grave mistake allying yourself with these humans. They are beneath you. Jake started to respond, but Kalara cut him off. She stood up, her voice carrying across the entire hall. Ambassador, I have listened to your counsel before and I found it worthless. You came to this palace 3 months ago to court me. You spent one afternoon here before deciding I was too unconventional for your tastes. You judged me without truly knowing me. Now you presume to judge Captain Murphy the same way. You see humans as primitive because they don't follow your traditions. You see me as flawed because I don't fit your expectations. But the truth is, Ambassador, the flaw is not in us. It is in you. You cannot see value in anything that looks different from what you know. She turned to Jake. Captain Murphy appreciates me for who I am, not who you think I should be. He values strength and intelligence over tradition and convention. That makes him wiser than any suitor I have met, including you. Kalara sat down and the hall remained silent. Jake saw Emperor Valthion at the head of the table, and the Emperor was smiling. Later that night, Jake and Kalara stood on her balcony again. The dinner had ended awkwardly, with the Thalorian ambassador leaving early. The Festival of Unity was the most important diplomatic event of the year. Representatives from dozens of alien species gathered at Harmony's Crown, a massive space station that served as neutral ground for the Allied worlds. For 3 days, delegates would celebrate the founding of the Galactic Trade Coalition, negotiate new agreements, and show off their power and influence. Jake stood in his quarters aboard the Frontier Dawn, adjusting his formal uniform for what felt like the 100th time. His hands were shaking slightly and he couldn't seem to stop them. Sophie walked in without knocking, which she always did when she knew he was nervous. You look fine, she said firmly. Stop fidgeting. Sophie, I'm about to walk into a room full of the galaxy's most powerful people and publicly declare that I'm courting an alien princess, Jake said. A princess that every other suitor rejected. Half the people there will think I'm insane. The other half will think I'm trying to manipulate the Savanthian Empire for political gain. And all of them will be wrong, Sophie replied. You're walking in there because you care about Kalara, because she's brilliant and strong and perfect for you. Anyone with eyes can see that you two are good together. Jake took a deep breath. Sophie was right. This wasn't about what other people thought. This was about him and Kalara making a choice together. A choice to be honest about their feelings in front of the entire galaxy. According to Savanthian tradition, Kalara would make her entrance first. Then Jake would step forward from the crowd to join her. It was a public declaration, a way of announcing their courtship to everyone present. Once he walked to her side, there would be no taking it back. Everyone would know that the human captain and the Savanthian princess were together. The main hall of Harmony's Crown was breathtaking. The walls were transparent, showing the stars and nebulas beyond. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the massive space, all wearing their finest ceremonial clothing. Music from multiple cultures blended together in a surprisingly beautiful harmony. Jake had never seen so many different aliens in one place. He waited near the entrance as tradition required. His heart was pounding in his chest. Around him he heard whispers and saw aliens pointing at him. They knew who he was. They knew why he was here. The rumors had spread quickly through diplomatic channels. The human captain who had somehow won the attention of the princess that nobody wanted. The royal herald stepped forward, and the hall fell silent. Presenting Her Imperial Highness Crown Princess Kalara of the Sivanthian Empire. Kalara appeared at the top of the grand staircase, and Jake forgot how to breathe. She wore traditional Sivanthian ceremonial robes in deep purple and silver. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style with crystal ornaments that caught the light and sparkled like stars. But what caught Jake's attention most was the small detail on her shoulder. There, worked in silver thread, was the emblem of Earth. She was wearing his world symbol openly, declaring her choice before she even reached the bottom of the stairs. The whispers started immediately. Jake could hear snippets of conversation even from where he stood. She's actually going through with it. A human. Has she lost her mind? The Emperor must be desperate to allow this. I heard she rejected 6 noble suitors before this. Kalara reached the base of the stairs and paused. Her eyes scanned the crowd until they found Jake. When their eyes met, she smiled. Not the diplomatic smile of a princess performing her duty, but something genuine and warm and just for him. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward. The crowd parted as he walked through, and he felt hundreds of eyes watching him. Some looks were curious. Others were hostile. A few were pitying, as if he were making a terrible mistake. Jake ignored them all and kept his eyes on Kalara. When he reached her, he extended his hand. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, loud enough for only her to hear. "You clean up well yourself, Captain," Kalara replied, taking his hand. Together, they walked into the hall. Behind them, Jake heard the whispers grow louder, but he didn't care. Kalara's hand was warm in his, and she held her head high with pride and confidence. Whatever happened tonight, they were facing it together. The evening was a mix of wonderful moments and challenging confrontations. Many delegates made a point of speaking with them. Some seemed genuinely curious about their unusual courtship. Others were clearly sizing up this unexpected alliance, trying to figure out what it meant for galactic politics. A Corvian noble asked Kalara detailed questions about Sivanthian military readiness, clearly wondering if the alliance with humans meant the Empire was preparing for war. A Zephyrid ambassador spent 20 minutes explaining to Jake why human expansion into certain star systems was problematic. Through it all, Jake and Kalara stood together, presenting a united front. But the most difficult moment came when Ambassador Kretch approached them. The Krill delegate was a massive reptilian being, nearly 7 feet tall with scales that looked like armor. His species had attacked human colonies multiple times before Jake's fleet had defeated them at Deneb. The peace treaty was barely a year old, and tensions were still high. "Captain Murphy," Kretch said through his translator device. The electronic voice was flat and emotionless. "How interesting to see the architect of my people's defeat enjoying himself at a diplomatic gathering." Jake kept his voice level and calm. "Ambassador Kretch, the Krill attacked civilian targets. We responded to protect our people. Your government signed the peace accord. I hope we can move forward from past conflicts." "Move forward?" Kretch's eyes narrowed. "My people lost 3 fleets because of your tactics. Ships that took decades to build. Warriors who trained their entire lives. And now you seek to gain influence in the Sivanthian Empire through this courtship. Tell me, Captain, is this another tactical maneuver? Another way to gain advantage over your enemies?" Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but before he could respond, Kalara stepped forward. Her voice carried across the nearby conversations, making other delegates turn to watch. "Ambassador Kretch, you speak of tactical maneuvers? Let me remind you that the Krill attacked human colonies without provocation. You murdered civilians, including children. Captain Murphy and his fleet responded with appropriate force to stop your aggression. The fact that you lost those battles does not make you the victim in this situation." Kretch turned his attention to Kalara, his voice dangerous. "Your Highness, I would advise caution in choosing allies. The humans are violent and unpredictable. They have been part of the galactic community for barely 2 centuries, yet they have already been involved in multiple conflicts." "Is this the species you wish to tie your empire to?" "Yes," Kalara said firmly. "Because unlike many species in this hall, humans are honest about who they are. They don't hide behind diplomatic language when they believe something is wrong. They stand up for their people and their principles. Captain Murphy was invited here by my father, with full imperial approval. He has conducted himself with honor and respect. If you have grievances about the war, take them through proper diplomatic channels. Do not insult my guest or question my judgment at a festival meant to celebrate unity." The area around them had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching now. For a long moment, Kretch stared at Kalara. Then slowly he bowed his head in acknowledgement and walked away. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank you. Though I could have handled him." "I know," Kalara replied quietly. "But you shouldn't have to fight every battle alone. Not anymore." Later in the evening, Jake and Kalara escaped to one of the observation platforms. The crowds and music and political conversations had become overwhelming. They stood together at the transparent wall, looking out at the stars and the ships coming and going from the station. "Are you okay?" Jake asked. That confrontation with Kretch was intense. "I'm fine," Kalara said. "Better than fine, actually. Jake, being here with you tonight, facing all those stares and whispers and hostile questions, I expected to feel ashamed or defensive. But I don't. I feel free. For the first time in my life, I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I'm just myself. And you're standing beside me anyway." "Not anyway," Jake corrected gently. "Because of who you are. Kalara, these past few weeks with you have been the best of my life. You're brilliant, you're strong, you're honest. You challenge me and inspire me. I'm not here because you're a princess or because of political alliances. I'm here because I'm falling in love with you." Kalara turned to face him fully. In the starlight, her violet skin seemed to glow. Her eyes were bright with emotion. "Jake Murphy, you foolish, wonderful human. Do you think I chose you because you were the last option? I chose you because you were the first person who made me feel like being myself was enough. The first person who looked at me and saw someone worth knowing, not just a problem to be solved or a prize to be won." She kissed him then, and Jake wrapped his arms around her. Somewhere in the station, they were probably violating about a dozen diplomatic protocols. But in that moment, with Kalara in his arms and stars surrounding them, Jake couldn't bring himself to care about protocols or politics, or what anyone else thought. The morning after the Festival of Unity, Jake was summoned to a private meeting with Emperor Valtheon. Kalara insisted on coming with him. They walked through the palace corridors hand in hand, no longer hiding their connection. Palace workers and guards stared at them openly now, but Jake noticed the stares had changed. There was less shock and more curiosity. Some of the younger guards even smiled at them as they passed. Emperor Valtheon received them in a small private chamber, instead of the formal throne room. It was a comfortable space with soft furniture and windows overlooking the palace gardens. The emperor stood at one of the windows, watching the three moons set as the sun rose. "Captain Murphy, Kalara," he said, turning to face them. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Jake and Kalara sat together on a couch. Jake noticed that Kalara kept holding his hand, as if she needed the connection to stay strong for what was coming. "Father," Kalara began, but Valtheon raised his hand gently. "Let me speak first. Daughter?" The emperor's expression was complicated, showing pride and regret in equal measure. "I have received over 300 messages since last night. From ambassadors, from allied worlds, from noble families across the galaxy. Half are outraged by your choice. They call it a scandal, a betrayal of tradition, an alliance beneath your station." Jake felt his stomach drop. This was it. The emperor was going to tell them it couldn't work, that politics and tradition were too important. But then Valtheon smiled. "The other half are intrigued. Impressed, even. They say you showed courage and independence. They say Captain Murphy defended you with honor. They say perhaps the Sivanthian Empire is finally ready to value substance over tradition." He walked over to them and sat down across from the couch. "Captain Murphy, you have accomplished something I have been trying to do for years. In one evening, you and my daughter showed the galaxy that strength and tradition are not the same thing. You proved that being true to oneself is more valuable than conforming to expectations." "Your Majesty," Jake said carefully, "I didn't do anything except stand beside Kalara. She's the one who has been fighting against those expectations her entire life." "Precisely," Valtheon agreed. "And I am ashamed that I did not support her more strongly. I saw her brilliance, her strength, her incredible potential. But I allowed the council and tradition to make me cautious. I tried to fit her into a box that was too small for who she is. You showed me that was wrong." He turned to Kalara, and Jake saw tears in the Emperor's eyes. "My daughter, you were never the problem. The problem was a system too rigid to recognize your value. I am sorry for every moment I made you feel like you needed to be different, like who you were wasn't enough. Kalara's voice was thick with emotion. Father, I never blamed you. I know you were trying to do what was best for the Empire. But I forgot that what is best for the Empire includes having a crown princess who is allowed to be herself, Valtian said. Captain Murphy, if you are sincere in your courtship of my daughter, you have my full blessing. But I must know, does Earth support this union? Jake pulled out a data crystal from his uniform pocket. I received this message yesterday, Your Majesty. May I show you? Valthion nodded, and Jake loaded the message into the room's display system. The holographic image of Admiral Kate Morrison appeared, standing in what looked like her office on Earth. Emperor Valthion, Princess Kalara, Admiral Morrison began. She was a stern-looking woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Earth Alliance has reviewed Captain Murphy's reports regarding his courtship of Princess Kalara. While unconventional, we see significant potential in this alliance. Captain Murphy has our full support to pursue this courtship, with the understanding that both parties enter freely and with mutual respect. We look forward to strengthening ties between our peoples and learning from your ancient civilization. The message ended, and Valthion nodded slowly. Then let us discuss not the terms of a political marriage, but the foundation of a true partnership. The next several weeks were intense. Jake remained on the Savanthian homeworld, and he and Kalara worked together on a proposal that would benefit both their civilizations. They called it the Cultural and Military Exchange Program. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Savanthian officers would train with human military forces, learning human tactics of flexibility and improvisation. Human engineers and scientists would study with Savanthian experts, gaining access to technology that was centuries more advanced. Both sides would benefit from understanding each other's strengths. Kalara presented the proposal to the Imperial Council, with Jake providing supporting data and examples. When Councillor Draven objected, calling it inappropriate, 3 other council members spoke up in support. They had been inspired by Kalara's courage at the festival. They had seen the positive reaction from other worlds. The political landscape was shifting and the old guard was losing power. The proposal passed by a vote of 7-5. But it wasn't all politics and planning. Jake and Kalara stole moments together whenever they could. They took early morning flights in Savanthian atmospheric craft, soaring over purple oceans and green forests. They spent late nights talking about everything from philosophy to music to their dreams for the future. They had quiet dinners where they simply enjoyed each other's company without worrying about protocols or politics. One evening, about 2 months after the festival, Jake found Kalara in her workshop. She was bent over a holographic display, working on a new engineering project. She was so focused that she didn't hear him enter. Jake watched her for a moment, marveling at how beautiful she looked when she was completely absorbed in her work. Her fingers moved quickly across the display, adjusting designs and running calculations. This was Kalara at her most authentic, doing what she loved without worrying about what anyone else thought. You're staring, Kalara said without looking up, a smile on her face. Can't help it, Jake replied, walking over to stand beside her. What are you working on? A new propulsion system for shuttles, Kalara explained. Current designs are inefficient. I think I can increase speed by 40% while reducing fuel consumption. That's incredible, Jake said, studying the schematics. Have you shown this to your father? Not yet, Kalara admitted. I wanted to finish the calculations first. But Jake, I've been thinking. When you return to Earth, I want to come with you. Jake looked at her in surprise. You want to leave your homeworld? Not permanently, Kalara clarified. But I need to see Earth, meet your people, understand where you come from. My father has agreed to let me travel as a diplomatic envoy. I can help establish the cultural exchange program while learning about human civilization. You'd do that? Jake asked. Leave everything you know to travel to an alien world? Kalara turned to face him fully. Jake, you're not asking me to leave everything I know. You're inviting me to expand my world, to see new things, learn new ideas, meet new people. That's what I've always wanted, the chance to grow beyond the narrow box others tried to put me in. Jake pulled her close. You know this won't be easy. There will be people on both our worlds who disapprove, challenges we can't predict. Then we'll face them together, Kalara said firmly, just like we've faced everything else. You taught me that being true to myself wasn't a weakness. It was the greatest strength I had. Now let's show both our worlds what two people can accomplish when they refuse to let others define who they should be. 6 months later, Jake and Kalara stood before assembled representatives from Earth and the Sivanthian Empire. The ceremony blended traditions from both worlds. Kalara wore robes that combined Sivanthian purple with Earth blue. Jake wore a formal uniform that incorporated Sivanthian crystal decorations. Sophie stood as Jake's second, while Kalara's younger sister Miala fulfilled the same role for her. The ceremony was held at a new facility built specifically for the cultural exchange program. It was symbolic, a space that belonged to neither world but to both, a place where different cultures could meet and learn from each other. Emperor Valtheon performed the Sivanthian portion of the ceremony, speaking ancient words about honor and partnership. Admiral Morrison attended via hologram from Earth, offering human marriage traditions about love and commitment. When it came time for Jake and Kalara to speak, they had written their own vows. "Kalara," Jake said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "When I first met you, I saw a warrior and a scholar, someone brilliant and strong who refused to pretend to be less than she was. Over these months, I've learned that you're so much more than that. You're kind and funny. You're stubborn and brave. You challenge me to be better while accepting me as I am. I promise to stand beside you through whatever challenges come, to support your dreams and celebrate your victories, to be your partner in every sense of the word." Kalara smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "Jake, you came into my life when I had almost given up hope. Hope that anyone would see me as more than a problem to be solved. You looked at me and saw someone worth knowing, worth fighting for. You taught me that I didn't need to change who I was to deserve love and respect. I promise to be honest with you always, to face our challenges with courage, to build a future that honors both our worlds while creating something entirely new. I